in my opinion, this actually might have been the worst thing for Pharazôn. From a
Oh,
strategy
yes.
perspective, your boy is cooked. Like,
Yeah.
this is not what you need during a usurping. You do not need the gods to come in to who's worthy or not. The last thing you want is the gods to judge your opponent as a worthy contender. And that is
Yeah.
exactly what, like you were saying, everybody's chanting, Muriel, Queen of the Sea. How's Pharazôn going to beat that? What are you going to do, bud? You going to get in the water too? Because
My turn.
how else do you combat this except to be like, fine, I'm going in the water too. I mean,
Hello and welcome back to the channel. Amber with Laura once again. We are on episode 6 of Rings of Power. Every episode gets better and better.
it absolutely does.
Last week, really liked it. This one, I think, is even better. We've got a couple major plot lines going on. Was there one this episode that really stuck with you?
Ooh, I would say the Adar Galadriel plotline. That was the one that I
okay.
was like really excited to see kind of unfold.
It's nice getting these two characters together. The way that things play out, I mean, Adar got her good.
Oh, he did.
Pulled the rug out from underneath her, which, sucks for the good guys, but if you're Team Adar, hey, this
This
episode
could be a
might be for
win.
you.
I think she really underestimated Adar. I think she underestimated how long he's been around, how well he actually knows Sauron, and how determined he is.
Yeah, I like that it kind of ended with her saying, look, this is Sauron's plan by design.
Yeah.
He wants you to attack Eregion.
That last scene was probably my favorite scene of the episode.
It was really good.
Yeah.
It was really good. It works so well in the context of the Celebrimbor Sauron plot. Like, these two are really tight, really interconnected. Everything that's happening at Eregion right now is just, it's a rough plot line for the good guys.
It is. It is.
I feel so bad for Celebrimbor. On one hand, he was so susceptible to just everything that Sauron is doing. He's just walking right into it. But on the other hand, almost everyone that comes in contact with Sauron seems to kind of just fall under his manipulation. So it's not all on Celebrimbor. Like, his whole work group, his assistants and workers are just enamored with Anatar. So he's got them all.
He does. I found it really interesting how the elves spend a lot of time talking about how susceptible everyone else is while regarding themselves as somehow detached from the influence of the rings. And we really see how that works against them throughout this season.
I like that really slow build too. And I guess it's not really slow, but in terms of like what we see with the dwarves, it's instantaneous. With the elves, it's a little bit different, but it's that rot is just creeping in. And it's really fun to watch this all unfold. It's just digging deeper every week.
Yeah. Actually, that leads me to like one of my favorite things about this season so far has actually been the pacing of the stories.
It's so quick. And then the scenes that I want to linger tend to linger.
Yeah.
It's like they read my mind.
Well, like you were saying, we're moving along quick. We're getting things done. The story is progressing, but at the same time, I don't feel as though I'm left without any context of what's happening.
Yeah. I had read yesterday that a large amount of scenes from Númenor were cut. I don't know if it was for time or for content, or if it was like a studio thing kind of coming in and saying like, hey, this is too long, too much. We want you to change things. I don't know whose call it was. I didn't notice that there were missing scenes. And I'm sure people who are more invested and know more about the background of, the show and the story as a whole, I'm sure some of those people could clock that, but I didn't. What I'm seeing in Númenor is like really good pacing. It's flying by really fast, but at the same time, I'm getting a lot of like these big emotional moments. So
Right.
I'm still just like it's enough for me.
I actually am surprised to hear that there were a bunch of Numenor scenes cut because I don't feel like there was any point in a Numenor scene where I was like, this feels half baked.
I mean, even this episode, we get Numenor stuff, but it's not feeling like it's missing something.
Yeah, I mean,
Like all the details are there.
we're moving quickly, but I don't feel like anything's missing. But I also should, I guess, disclaim that with I'm a really pedestrian enjoyer of the Tolkien universe.
Same.
So all of my
Same.
perspectives are coming from somebody who really enjoys fantasy as a whole. But as far as like my investment in the Tolkien universe, I am not a knowledgeable super fan by any means.
Yeah, same with me.
In that first scene, I know it was just like a little blurb of a scene, but I am glad that we kind of checked in with Arondir, just even for a brief moment. But my only question about the first scene is were those like deserter orcs that he came across? I mean, it worked out for him either way, whether they were patrolling or deserting, because he kills them and he finds their little secret battle plans on a scrap of cloth.
Yeah, he got that map.
Yeah.
Now he knows where to go. It does give context to like what he's doing, where he's going. The last episode that we saw from him, he was like, I'm going to get Adar. And now
He is
he's on
going
his own little
He
journey.
is going to get Adar now.
I really love this next scene with the dwarves because King Durin has turned into the Monopoly man. Like he has gone full like full capitalist. He is swimming in gold. They're bringing in buckets and carts full of gold items and just like starting piles. And I couldn't help but thinking about our best boy, Smog.
I couldn't either because the moment I saw like that first wheelbarrow, like kind of clinking coins out and then dump, I was like, so this is how the treasure room started. You guys are really doing a good job of collecting tribute for Smaug, who will show up later to collect on those dues.
Yeah, the other mafia in town.
The one man mafia.
I think this was a great way to show what's happening with the dwarves, but also such a fun moment because he summons Prince Doran and Anatar is there to greet. And Anatar slash Sauron is like, look, Eregion, it's under the threat of an invasion. We need mithril for more rings and we can trade, timber. And the king is like, no. So you get like that false sense of hope, right? Where it's like, like the corrupted king, he's gonna put his foot down and like do something really noble or honorable. No,
No,
not at all.
that was not out of honor. We have King Durin who's like, no, we're not giving you mithril. And Prince Durin is very pleased. Anatar is obviously not. But then when they're alone, King Durin is like, LOL, I'm just driving up the price. We're gonna be hella rich off of this war. Like, I'm just giving them time to stew and come back with a better offer.
Yeah, yeah. Like, you hate to see the dwarves like falling under the spell of Sauron, but that was ice cold.
It was.
Like, respect, I guess.
Like,
Uh,
but yeah, like you said, it's sad to see it happen, but at the same time, it's also fun to see Anatar not get his way. Because you
absolutely.
can see the look on
Absolutely.
his face in that scene. He is stewing when he turns around.
It makes me real curious what his next play is with the dwarves. Well, I guess we see a little bit of it.
Yeah.
We also cut to Disa, who is a one woman blockade for this mining effort, like literally blocking it with her body.
Yeah, I love her grassroots protest.
Yeah.
I can see why Prince Durin can't imagine humiliating his father because he is genuinely caught in between like a rock and a hard place here. But at the same
Hmm.
time, he also does recognize that the influence that the ring has on his father just continues to grow moment by moment, and that his father is becoming somebody that he doesn't really recognize anymore.
Yeah. Going back to that shot with the gold, even his robes are golden. Like he's living it up. He's really fallen into this to a point where it's like, will he have any redemption? Is there anything left to his father, left to the king? Is there anything noble or good or pure or brave, like deep down in there, or is he gone?
Yeah.
But I have to just give props to Disa for her cave singing and
Look,
releasing the bats.
look, girl. When we get to that point, stage 1 of Protect the Mountain begins, and Disa takes the first round with her legion of mountain bats.
She's just got like her own personal attack animals at this point, and it's incredible. Like, I
It
love it
is.
so
I
much.
love how quickly she took round 1, but like obviously they're aware that this is not the end. This is just the beginning.
Yeah. And too, like, you kind of get the idea that even the miners are put in a really hard place by this. Like, when they approach her, you can tell they don't want to do this. They don't want to hurt her. Like, you can tell that they care about her. The way that they try and kind of like, look, like, we don't want to do this, but if we have to, like, we're going to move you ourselves. They're in a really tough spot.
Yeah, because their options are do nothing and face like treasonous charges, or do something and don't face treasonous charges. They're in
Yeah.
a really, like, everybody's in a bad spot in Khazad-dûm.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's in a, this whole
Kind of,
episode
yeah,
is filled
everywhere.
with really bad stuff happening. Like this whole Númenor trial by Abyss.
I enjoyed that a lot.
Let me tell you what. Episode 1, we go back to that first sea monster. Was that the same type of sea monster? I don't know.
I kind of thought it was, but I don't know for sure.
The first one kind of looked like a mythological interpretation of a sturgeon.
Yeah.
And this one was much more like Kraken in design. But this whole trial by abyss, like summoning the sea worm is what they called it.
Yeah.
It was cool. It was cool. Like that doesn't happen like right off of this first scene, but we have Elendil talking to his daughter about the difference between pride and integrity. And she doesn't seem to understand that he's doing something based on his integrity for the good, for what he sees could be the good of Númenor. And she's like, you're being prideful. And he was like, well, I guess we don't have anything else to talk about. That's rough. Like this schism between him and his daughter, it's so rough because on one hand, if Pharazôn like wins, if Elendil dies, his daughter's never going to forget or forgive what happened, and she's probably going to blame her father for what happened.
Yeah, I think she will. It's, in those scenes, we see how Arian is, her heart's in the right place. You have to know, like, when you see the throne room scene in Númenor, that the moment Pharazôn said that he was setting Elendil free, I knew there was, first of all, going to be a caveat to that. And
Yeah.
secondly, I also knew that his daughter is the one who brokered that.
It's giving Steps of Baelor,
Yeah,
Ned Stark.
it is. Oh, that's a
Treachery.
perfect way to put it. The steps of Baelor and Ned Stark. Yeah, Pharazôn really does get kind of Joffrey about it.
Yeah, this grouping of his daughter and Pharazôn and this other older guy that's somehow involved. I can't tell if he's a part of the manipulation. Like if he's, I can't tell if he's calling the shots.
Or if he's just a leech.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Is he like, oh my gosh, I'm about to use another Game of Thrones reference. Is he like Hand of the King type thing?
Right.
Or is he like Master of Coin type thing? Because there's a big difference in the like weight of those, offices.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. And I don't, again, like, I don't know enough about the history and the source material to know really what his deal is. So I guess people who are listening, if you know, you can let us
I
know.
have a question for people who are listening. In that one shot that we pan into the little throne room congregation, are we in Gondor? Because it kind of looked like that, those scenes from Gondor with the tree and all of that, but I don't know. I don't know. I will say this though. During the scene inside of the cell, Arian sets up a meet between Muriel and Elendil And for a brief moment, I thought that her plan would work, that he would like kind of back down if Muriel says to, and Arian would kind of get her way in this. But as we see, not how it goes. He stays
Yeah.
committed to the cause of the trial and the judgment of the Valinor.
I do really appreciate, even though, like, look, if it were me, I wouldn't be so quick to have my head lopped off by a sea worm, but I do appreciate his sense of justice here, even if it's gonna get him killed.
Right. And like
Like,
when you think about it, he has multiple ideologies intersecting here. We have his religious ideologies and his political ideologies, and the fact that he obviously loves Muriel. And all of those things kind of converge into what ends up being, like, when you think about it like that, a pretty understandable position from Elendil.
yeah. I think this is another thing that this season is doing really well, and I know we've talked about it before, but the motivations of the characters feel real enough to me. There's not a lot of moments where I'm like, this is unbelievable. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
don't get me wrong, it's high fantasy. There are going to be things that are unbelievable, but the motivations and the actions of the characters feel very solid.
they do.
Where, like, I can envision a person doing this. Like I said, would I want to go to the Sea Worm? No. But in a fantasy setting, a fantasy character like Elendil, whether it's his pride or integrity, whatever it is, he's behaving realistically
Right.
for me.
Look, if you instilled those same ideologies in me that Elendil has, who's to know if I would be like, yeah, send me to the waters.
Right. So it does cut back to Khazad-dûm for a moment. We see the bats, but the one thing that I did want to touch on is that Durin arrives ready to help Disa. So he's now a part of this blockade. He's joined the effort, which I just love these two. What a power couple. They deserve to be king and queen.
They do. Durin, he has the temperament and the perspective of like a good leader in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and she does too. I mean, they're just
Absolutely.
a. If there was any power couple in the show, it's these two.
Absolutely.
Then we get to this. This was such a beautiful scene, the actual trial by Abyss.
Yes, in a real sneaky switcheroo based on archaic religious law, Muriel is able to take Elendil's place in the trial and faces the Valar's judgment for him.
I love the Elendil's daughter. I have to wonder if she set this up, right? When they're announcing this switcheroo, she's like, "Oh, it's legit. It's in the bylaws." Like she's got her, finger
She
ready. Like it's
she
you got
was
to do
like,
it.
if you check subsection, like
Yeah.
ready for this, which makes me wonder if this was actually pre-planned by her and Muriel together.
Yeah. You know what? Going back to Numenor scenes that could have been cut, maybe that's something that was cut.
Ooh.
Maybe that was something that was supposed to be included.
Yeah, and you also get like a good taste of how committed Arian is to actually saving her father. Like, even though she
Yeah.
gives them a lot of flack and they're on two very different points of ideology, you can tell she really does care about him, and she does not want him to die or for anything
No.
bad to happen to him. She just really wants him to give up this fight.
Yeah. I loved the visuals of Muriel in the tide pool.
Oh, those were
There was
incredible.
something really, really nice about like that white gown that she's wearing, the blueness of the water, the blue that kind of represents Numenor and their connection to the water and the sea. And it was just this really striking scene, right? Her peacefully still, eyes open but can't see. And then these like tentacles enveloping her, like just coming slowly closer in towards her body. And I was like, that, you know what? This is what high fantasy should be for me.
Right.
I love that they went there. Both of us both love A Song of Ice and Fire, but that's one of the big differences, right? Song of Ice and Fire is like political machinations with like a sprinkling of fantasy elements, right?
Yeah.
But Lord of the Rings for me, as like you said, like as a very pedestrian, just person on the sidelines who enjoys it but doesn't know a lot about it, this is what high fantasy feels like for me. Having this woman kind of like spit out of a tide pool by something that resembles a kraken in this strange, like, trial where it's like, where did the rules come? How did this come into play? I don't know, but I'm just going with it. And the way that it's shot was just beautiful. It was just a really fun scene. I'm so glad that we got something like this because it just builds to the high fantasy elements that I'm hoping to see in a show like this.
This scene, actually, one of the things I really liked in the actual scene of her under the water is how after all of the tentacles and stuff come in and the sea worm is kind of right up in her face and you can tell it's looking at her almost with like a confusion in its eyes about like, why are you not afraid?
Yeah, you're right.
And how her lack of fear seems to play a role in her being deemed judged innocent.
Yeah, if anything, Muriel has been incredibly courageous throughout this entire series. Even though season one, I'm still kind of like, it was fine. She always showed courage. So, like, this is a character trait that's came through since the beginning. And it's really interesting that even though now she can't see, she's just as brave as she would be with her sight. Maybe if not more. Like,
Yeah.
I guess if you're blind and you're put in this situation, what you really have no choice but to just rely on the judgment of this creature, right? Like you can't do anything. You just have to wait and see what happens. So that's what she does. I don't know if she believed that she would be found deemed worthy or not, but it's kind of making up for the moment that the eagle lands and Pharazôn kind of manipulates that to his advantage. And in this instance, there's no deniability about what happens. Like she's spit out of the water and, like the crowd goes wild. Queen Muriel, Queen of the Sea, like people chanting Queen of the Sea. And if this doesn't get you as like a fantasy fan, I don't know what will.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say it's kind of cheesy, but I loved it.
This scene, it changed my perspective on a scene from the last episode, the great eagle scene. I am now convinced that that eagle showed up for Muriel and Pharazôn just kind of seized the moment, and because the eagle couldn't necessarily like communicate its will,
Hmm.
Pharazôn took that moment from Muriel. But in these last two episodes, we've seen her in proximity to these great creatures that exist while not existing within the political realms of the inhabitants of Middle Earth. So, in my opinion, this actually might have been the worst thing for Pharazôn. From a
Oh,
strategy
yes.
perspective, your boy is cooked. Like,
Yeah.
this is not what you need during a usurping. You do not need the gods to come in to who's worthy or not. The last thing you want is the gods to judge your opponent as a worthy contender. And that is
Yeah.
exactly what, like you were saying, everybody's chanting Muriel, Queen of the Sea. How's Pharazôn going to beat that? What are you going to do, bud? You going to get in the water too? Because
My turn.
how else do you combat this except to be like, fine, I'm going in the water too. I mean, I'm judged worthy too. But instead of going in the water like I wish he would have, he rushes like to the Palantir and he places his hand upon it. And we see like his mind's eye connect to the Palantir and he sees like that pool of magma and the explosions of Mount Doom and what I think are the explosions of Mount Doom and Mordor. And he sees Halbrand.
Yeah, he's in a tough spot now. What does he do with this information? He's got an uprising on his hands on one side, and on the other side, he's just seeing visions of the end of the world per se. So, what you gonna do about that, bud? Like, where you gonna go?
Honestly,
What
what
are you gonna
can he
do?
do? What?
Yeah,
Admit to using the Palantir when he used that as part of his ploy to usurp Muriel? Is he going to
right.
turn around and tell the people it's okay for me, but not for her? I'm sure that'll go over like a lead balloon.
I have to wonder if, from what I know about, like, like, let's go with the movies, I don't recognize Númenor being a thing. So I have to assume Númenor is wiped out at some point. Is it due to Pharazôn withholding this information? Is that a part of it?
Ooh, that is an excellent question to present. Huh.
Is does Númenor only live on in those who got away, like Isildur? Like, is that his part in the story? Like
Hmm.
those who left survive? I don't know where this is going, but yeah, we'll see. We shall see.
I'm really excited to see this plot line continue to unfold and see
Me
where it
too.
goes.
Númenor shocked me. I did not realize how invested I was going to be in this storyline, but it's a top contender for me.
Same. I actually, though, I will say I've enjoyed almost all of the storylines this season. I really
They're all
enjoy
good.
how we're watching them start very far away from each other and then slowly working towards convergence.
Yeah, agreed. I feel like at some point I forgot to bring up the stranger. Wasn't there a stranger scene
Yes, yes,
earlier?
there is. At the end of this little like side quest to that small forest of what appear to be dead trees, that this is the stranger's a sort of trial by fire here. He has a choice to make. There are times when one path becomes two and you must choose. And so he's stuck here at this crossroads between his destiny and his friends. And he's told, if you choose wrong, you're done. Journey over. You can't come back. I won't be taking more appointments with you. Choose wisely.
Yeah, Tom is like, you can pick Nori. You can go off to save her and Poppy, but if you do, like, our time together, that's it. There's no round two. So he's got to go find his staff, I guess,
It
like
looks that way.
in the sea of dead trees, like as far as the eye can see. So we'll have to see what happens on that front because it was a pretty quick scene. We do get
Yeah,
a little time with the Harfoots. We see the relationship between Poppy and Nobody become, something more than friends. So we've got that going on.
they're also still trying to figure out like what they're gonna do about the Boba Fett men, Acolyte
Yes.
Man's little troop.
Henchman.
Yeah, his
Yeah.
henchmen, because they've still got to contend with that.
Yeah, and then I feel like the next like meaty plot is everything that's happening with Galadriel and Adar.
One thing I really enjoyed about Adar and Galadriel was that first scene with the two of them where it opens with this like little back and forth tete-a-tete about who got worse by Sauron.
Yeah.
They're basically like, no, it was you. You're the one he got over on more. And finally, Adar was like, you know what? Whatever. That's irrelevant. And he comes out with this like kind of solid base plan for joining forces to fight their common enemy. But Galadriel is like unwavering and saying no. And while I find it an interesting proposal, if not for anything, my only question is how do the logistics of two separate armies attacking one common foe while simultaneously being at high risk of attacking each other work for anybody but the shared enemy? Like
Yeah.
his point about elven pride is really brought to the surface in a lot of Galadriel's responses to him.
Yeah. And also he brings up a good point. What happens to the orcs after all of this? Are the elves
Yeah,
just going to be like, "Okay, good job. Glad we fought this. We both go our separate ways." Because he's got a point there. I don't think there can be a world where they exist peacefully.
right. But he does have a good point. Like, what happens if we defeat Sauron? Like, what? Basically, are you guys just going to put us all on the execution block by force after that? Or can you let us go back to Mordor? It seems like Adar's ultimate goal is to just be allowed for him and his children to exist in Mordor unbothered.
Yeah. And then it turns out that all of this doesn't even matter because he got the information that he wanted from her. She tells him that Elrond is coming and he's coming with an army and he's got the ring. And then Adar's like, back into the manacles you go. Sorry, I'm binding you again. Thanks for the information.
Don't need you
But
now.
yeah, well played.
It was well played. And then we have that second scene with them And like you were saying, she kind of gives the impression that they're going to work together. And then he shows her the true might of his forces, which you can see she was pretty taken aback by. Because she's
It
sitting
was
here thinking
thousands.
that he brought one legion. And he was like, ha, one legion. Let me show you what I actually brought. And he, it's just a span, like an endless span of orcs everywhere.
That really reinforces my idea that baby orcs' parents are gonna die.
Yeah.
This is going to be a battle.
And like,
This is gonna be a massive battle.
right. And touching back on what we had said a little bit earlier, this is the point where Galadriel realizes that this could actually be within Sauron's plans to have Adar deliver an army right to him.
Realistically, Sauron is probably hoping that he gets those last rings made and he can just walk on out of there in the turmoil. I mean, it seems like he is so sure of everything, right? He doesn't seem worried, he doesn't seem panicked. I have to wonder what his plan is. If Galadriel's right in saying this is all by his design, was it, hey, like maybe these two forces of orcs and elves just take each other out and then like kill two birds with one stone? I've got the rings and I just kind of quietly walk off into the night.
I mean, it really kind of looks like that's how it's going to work out for him right now, with his two foes being unable to come to an accord.
Right.
There's no turning back now, though.
No.
Like, we're going to war.
I love a good we're going to war episode.
Oh, I love a good we're going to war in fantasy.
I think this next scene for me was just, this was rough. Having Celebrimbor hear the bells, the alarm bells going off, and him kind of like rushing to the window and Anatar cutting him off. The drama and the suspense happening right here was really well done. We've got on one hand like Sauron cutting his palms, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what this signifies, but I have to guess that this is some type of blood magic, because when he does it, Celebrimbor goes outside afterwards and he's granted a vision of just essentially utopia.
Right. This is one of the first scenes where we actually get examples of just how powerful the magic that Sauron wields is.
Yes.
He's not
Yes.
just changing, this is not just a simple little parlor trick. He's changing the perspective reality of Celebrimbor with a spell.
It was so visually like stunning again with this episode. Like the little kids playing that white horse kind of like trotting off into the distance, and you see Celebrimbor kind of like at peace,
Yeah.
and he's able to walk back in and get back to what he needs to do. And Sauron just plays into it even more because he's like, it's not the Valor that needed you, it's me. I needed you. Like, you're important, giving him that kind of like pep talk. So he gets back in there and gets back to work.
Yeah, it was really kind of like a bittersweet scene, because we've all been watching Celebrimbor kind of writhe within this pull that Sauron has over him, and to like see him kind of relieved for a second was great, but at the same time we all know he's just seeing an illusion.
Yeah, when it cuts back to what's really going on and you just see people fleeing for their lives and the orcs constructing trebuchets and then like firing fireballs hitting the towers within Eregion. So
Right.
it's like, ooh.
And then we have that little like mystery container of mithril that I remember the dwarves saying no about. So where did that come from? I wasn't under the impression that Sauron was capable of alchemy at that level.
Right.
And if he is, why have they been getting
Curious.
the mithril from Khazad-dûm instead of just him?
Yeah. What's the point? What's the point?
Yeah, so what's in the container, buddy?
You know what would be a plot twist? As if like they already made the rings and he's just waiting it out so that Eregion falls. Like, yeah, just go
Ooh.
back inside.
It'll be fine, don't worry.
I love how this episode ended because what it looks like at this point is something that I think this show really needed coming off the back of season 1, which was payoff. So far, this season has been gradually rising in suspense and now in action. We've got this war about to happen. We see buildings toppling. So, like there's going to be a battle here, and that's exciting.
Right. Honestly, like from a viewer perspective, it still gives us 3 episodes, or no, 2 more episodes for a battle, which
For a
seems
battle and a
like,
conclusion.
right, which seems like appropriate pacing for that.
I agree. I agree. Like 2 episodes from what we've seen, the battle has to start next episode unless they are cutting to other plot lines, which I don't see them doing.
Ooh, that's a good point to make too. But we also have a lot of other plot lines that need conclusions for this season too.
Right. So maybe it's evenly spread. Maybe we get a little bit
Ooh,
of this, a little bit of that next episode.
like a breakfast buffet.
Yeah. Exactly. If it's a breakfast buffet, what plot line is Khazad-dûm?
Hmm. They've got to play a role in here somewhere. And I have a feeling that we're going to see King Durin and Prince Durin's contentions come to a head in the next 2 episodes.
Yeah, that seems highly likely. They're like the omelet of the buffet.
Yeah, and Prince Durin has a lot of love for the elves. Even though he can be kind of like cankerous about it, he does love and respect Elrond deeply.
Yeah.
And I don't
Yeah.
see him being super chill if he finds out that Elrond's over there.
Yeah. We've also got Arondir, who's should be making his way to this location at some point.
Girl, I can't wait for him to pop up in this fight because you know that's what's going to happen. He knows where he's going.
He's like the parfait of
Yeah,
the buffet.
he's going to flip out of a cart somewhere and get to it.
No, I'm totally picturing him like Jackie Channing it up like
You
the
can't tell
towers.
me nothing about this. Like, I know that he's going to have a bold entrance into this fight.
Oh, I can't wait for that. I can't wait. We need some type of conclusion with Acolyte Man.
I'll be honest with you, I don't really have many like thoughts about where that's we kind of have an idea of where it's going, but I don't know if I'm completely convinced that this storyline is gonna have a real finale conclusion this season because I don't think we're deep enough into the Stranger's storyline for that yet.
Yeah, it feels too disconnected to Eregion and Sauron at this point, where
Right.
like Sauron is kind of like he's this antagonistic force of the future in terms of what it means for the stranger. It's not an immediate battle, an immediate problem that needs dealt with. The stranger still has his walkabout to go on.
Right. And I kind of see it as like a plot line that's going to converge into the other ones probably a little later on.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I
obviously,
agree.
while it might not be everybody's favorite plot line, Gandalf's story is still incredibly important here. It just,
Hmm.
we may have to wait into season 3 to see it really develop.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get that confirmation of who the stranger is. Yeah. Will he proclaim himself? Shall he remember?
It would be interesting if he was suddenly like, oh shit, I'm Gandalf the Grey.
He falls, like hits his head on one of those trees.
I remember everything.
He tumbles down a couple times, wakes up, remember it all.
I think Númenor will be it'll be interesting to see how the Númenor plot lines are kind of tucked in towards the end of the season too. Because that's another plot line where I'm like, I feel like that one's going to stretch further into season 3 before we see it intersect what's currently happening.
Agreed. And the same with Isildur and Astrid's story and young Theo. I don't know where that's going. I don't really see where it connects to some of the other
Yeah,
plot lines this episode unless it has to do with Númenor because Isildur's allegiance, like
I
where does he stand in all of this?
right. I do kind of wonder if Astrid and Theo are more of like a secondary character that are there to further along Isildur's plotline.
That's kind of what I'm hoping. With Theo, I feel like it kind of goes back and forth. Is he like this kind of dark, sad kid who's going to be easily corruptible? Or is he gonna, like put his stake into the ground and be like, I'm for the good guys? I'm not quite sure, but I would hope after Arondir, saving him that he's seeing the good, in people
Right.
and something like that. I would be really depressed if Theo goes fully to the dark side.
Yeah,
But
I would actually be kind of surprised if he does.
yeah,
But then
that
again,
might be
like,
a little bit too tropey, but the orphaned child going dark, like
he doesn't
feels very
need
Star Wars.
he doesn't need the Lord Voldemort origin story.
So yeah, we've got a lot going on. I'm really excited to see where this plays out next week. We've got a war on our hands. It's looking good. Was there anything else that you wanted to?
It's just kind of like a flyby comment, but I am really excited to see this war pop off. If not for any reason, but I want to see Prime flex that budget.
Yes.
I want to see him flex that visual effects budget.
Yeah, we'll see next week, it looks like.
Oh, I'm excited.
Everybody who's listening right now, put your theories, what you think is going to happen next episode in here. I'm really curious what people think. I'm really curious about what they think the ties will be between some of these plot lines. Please like and subscribe if you enjoy this. Since I don't really cover Rings of Power and Lord of the Rings, I'm not a channel that a lot of people search out for this type of content. But if you're enjoying it, like, subscribe, and share. So thanks so much, and we'll be back next week.